Hello movie fans, and welcome back to another full movie recap with movie reveals. In this video, we're going to inform and educate you on the fantastically creepy third installment of The Conjuring, called The Devil Made Me Do It. In this very scary movie, you watch paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren take on one of the most sensational cases of their careers. Warning: this is a spoiler alert, but at least you will get to know what the movie is about and whether you want to watch it or not. Hope you enjoy it. In the opening scene, you see a creepy-looking house in Brookfield, Connecticut that appears to be the setting of some sort of demonic possession. Smashed windows, claw marks on the walls, and things all over the floor. The movie is based on real events and is set in 1981. Demonologists Ed and Lorraine, along with the family members of a young 8-year-old boy called David, are sitting in the living room. Also in the room is David's sister Debbie and her boyfriend Arnie Johnson. Ed tells the boy's father that the exorcism has been approved and that they are just waiting on the priest to arrive. The young boy David is resting in his bedroom when he suddenly hears a knock at the door. Riddled with fear, he runs into the bathroom and sits in the bathtub as if to hide. It appears he is not alone, and the shower above starts pouring blood all over him, to which he screams. The boy David suddenly goes crazy, as if possessed, and lashes out at his father, stabbing him in the leg. The priest arrives, and everyone grabs the boy and, despite his unnatural strength, manage to drag him to the table downstairs to perform the exorcism. During the exorcism, Lorraine has a vision of someone watching them and interfering with the ritual. Ed asks her what's wrong, but she seems confused. David starts foaming at the mouth and contorting his body while taunting them in a demonic voice. He is too powerful, and they struggle to hold him down. Afraid for David, Arnie begs the spirit to leave him alone and then invites the demon to enter his body instead. Ed witnesses the demon transport itself from David's body to Arnie's while he suffers from a heart attack and is taken to a hospital in a comatose state. In the next scene, we see Arnie going about his life as normal. He is at the family house and then goes inside and sees something strange on the wall. It's a hole, and as he bends down to look inside, a thin but very powerful woman appears behind him, chokes him only to then disappear. From that point onwards, Arnie starts feeling a strange presence around him. The following month, Ed wakes up at the hospital and reveals to Lorraine that he witnessed the demon enter Arnie's body. She calls the police and tries to send them to the kennel where Debbie and Arnie's apartment is and where Debbie works, warning them that a tragedy will occur there. Arnie and Debbie return to their apartment. Arnie is clearly unwell. Bruno, the landlord, is drunk and in the mood for partying, and Debbie is trying to get on with her work. Arnie starts seeing supernatural visions of Bruno transformed into some sort of creature, and in a state of demonic possession stabs Bruno 22 times. We then see Arnie walking down the road with his shirt and hands covered in blood. A policeman stops and questions him, to which he says he thinks he has done something wrong. With the support of the Warrens, his case becomes the first American murder trial to claim demonic possession as a defense, resulting in the beginning of an investigation into David's original possession. We see a flashback scene of David laying on a waterbed when suddenly a hand grabs him from underneath. The Warrens later discover a satanic curse passed on through a witch's totem, which was placed under the house directly underneath where the waterbed was. They then meet with Kastner, a former priest who previously dealt with the disciples of the Ram cult. He tells them that an occultist had intentionally left the totem, resulting in the creation of a curse on the Glatzels, causing the possession of David. He takes them down to his basement, which is filled with similar totems like the one the Warrens found. Lorraine said he should burn them, but Kastner says he felt it was safer to keep them locked up. He tells them that the disciples of the Ram follow Satan and his demons and were very powerful and not to be messed with. He then proceeds to tell them that the totem belongs to a master Satanist and not be taken lightly. In the next scene, We see this occultist conjuring up spells. Then we see Arnie mopping the floor in the prison hospital, in which he is serving time while he awaits trial. He then starts seeing demonic visions, and then is restrained by the guards. The Warrens travel to Danvers, Massachusetts to investigate the death of Katie Lincoln, who was also stabbed 22 times. Detectives had found a totem at the home of Katie's girlfriend Jessica, who is missing. The lead detective knows of the Warrens' reputation, but to test them, he asks Lorraine to identify the correct murder weapon. He places 3 knives on the table and asks her to choose the right one. Without hesitation, she picks the correct murder weapon, giving the detective proof that she knows what she is doing. They head to the woods and Lorraine initiates a vision to recreate the murder. She is able to see what Jessica sees and follows a path in the woods. She discovers that Jessica had stabbed Katie under the influence of a demonic possession. This is before jumping to her death off a cliff, which allows detectives to recover her body from the lake below. In the next scene, we see Debbie on the phone with Ed. She is frantic and tells him that the demon has followed Arnie and asking him to kill himself. Ed tells her to call the prison chaplain and have Arnie put on a 24-hour suicide watch. Lorraine tells Ed that this demon is not here of its free will, that it is a curse and someone is controlling it. But because it is a curse, it can be broken. She tells him that at the exorcism of David, she felt a connection with the person she thinks is responsible for all of this. She says that if the same person was responsible for killing Jessica, then the connection could still be open. The Warrens travel to the funeral home where her body rests, and Lorraine touches the corpse's hand to help find the location of the occultist. Lorraine, in a vision, travels through a dark tunnel and witnesses the occultist, a woman standing at an altar, attempting to have Arnie kill himself, but stops her just in time. We then see Ed confronted by a large corpse of a beastly-looking man. This man then starts running towards Ed as if to attack him. He screams at Lorraine to hurry and break the connection. Just in the nick of time, she lets go of the girl's hand, and the man's corpse drops to the floor. She tells Ed that the connection works both ways and that the occultist knows who they are. The Warrens return to their house in Connecticut to investigate further. They learn from a book that the curse can be broken by destroying the altar from where it was cast. They also learn that the woman casting the curse will not stop until it is carried through, as her own soul depends upon it. Lorraine tries to recall what the place was like in her vision in an effort to see if they can locate it so they can destroy the altar. She says it felt like it was underground. Ed briefly loses consciousness and sees the occultist in a vision. She casts a spell on him into killing Lorraine, but Drew stops him in time. Coming to his senses, he starts looking around their house. He says she was in their house and continues to search for something. That is when Lorraine notices a vase of black roses. Ed breaks the vase and hidden inside is a totem. Drew gives a book of witchcraft to Ed and states that for the curse to be lifted, the altar in which the Satanist woman operates must be destroyed. When they realize Katie attended nearby Fairfield University, they begin to assume the occultist is operating in the area. Lorraine returns to Kastner for help, and he reveals that he had raised a daughter named Isla, in violation of the requirement of clerical celibacy in the Catholic Church. He tells Lorraine that during his research, her fascination for the occult grew, later becoming the occultist. He regrets allowing her to follow this dark path and not doing something sooner to stop her. She has become far too powerful now, and he is worried what her obsession will lead to. Meanwhile, at the prison, Arnie is laying restrained in bed, with Debbie and the chaplain by his side watching over him. The occultist arrives at Kastner's home, and Kastner gives Lorraine access to the tunnels so she can hide. The occultist kills Kastner by slitting his throat, and because of their connection, Lorraine can see what the occultist sees. This is when she locates the altar. She tries to knock it over, but it is too heavy. We see the occultist slowly approaching the altar. Ed soon arrives and hears Lorraine's screams. He finds his way into the tunnels through a locked drain hole by using a sledgehammer. Lorraine is running for her life as she is being pursued by the evil woman through the dark tunnels. In a dramatic scene, she attacks Lorraine and tries to stab a knife into her eye. Lorraine somehow manages to resist and grabs a rock on the floor and knocks it on the head of the Satan worshiper so she can escape. Ed bumps into the occultist and is briefly possessed by this woman, and she tricks him into trying to kill Lorraine. Possessed, he starts to chase after Lorraine. Meanwhile, the occultist is back at her altar and continues the curse against Arnie. We see him at the prison undergoing a demonic possession. The chaplain recites verses from the Bible in an effort to stop the possession. Ed continues to chase after Lorraine. He seems intent on killing her, and Lorraine begs him to stop. She retells him of the time they first met, reminding him of their love. Back at the prison, Arnie is possessed and his body starts to contort and rises into the air. He holds a large shard of glass in his hand and tries to slit his own throat, but Debbie grabs onto his hand to stop him. Meanwhile, back in the tunnels, Ed continues to chase Lorraine, swinging the sledgehammer at her. Just before he is about to take a killing blow against her, she asks him to remember her. In a sudden climax, Ed regains his consciousness and destroys the altar, saving himself, Lorraine, and Arnie. The occultist confronts them both at the broken altar. Intent on causing them harm, Ed reminds her that she failed to complete the curse and that the demon she summoned will take her soul instead. Moments later, she is killed by the demon that she had summoned. In the next scenes, we see Ed place the cup from the altar in their room of artifacts, along with the Valak painting and the Annabelle doll. We also see Arnie, who is convicted of manslaughter, but ends up serving only 5 years of his sentence after marrying Debbie while in prison. In the final scene, we see both Ed and Lorraine. Ed shows Lorraine a replica of the gazebo they first kissed at, and then they kiss each other. The end. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.